Welcome to online training on impact evaluation for evidence-based development for the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs of the Gambia. Qualitative approaches in impact evaluation, non-experimental methods. Module 5, Lesson 4, Outcome Harvesting. This lesson will highlight expected outcomes, introduction about the lesson, detailed description of outcome harvesting, situations that merit the use of outcome harvesting, detailed steps in outcome harvesting, and a description of strengths and limitations of outcome harvesting. The expected outcome of this lesson is that participants, by the end of the day, will be able to explain what outcome harvesting is and what it contributes to program impact evaluation, and identify when to use outcome harvesting methods. They'll also be able to differentiate outcome harvesting from other approaches to evaluation. They will identify different outcome harvesting principles and steps and what is involved. And then, of fundamental significance, they will be able to apply outcome harvesting best practices in relation to program impact evaluation. Introduction. Outcome harvesting is one of the impactful evaluation methodologies to emerge in the field of social change and innovation in the last 20 years. It is very much differentiated from other evaluation approaches. Uniquely, outcome harvesting helps to understand and document how change happens in complex development programs that involve multiple social actors in terms of what was achieved and how did it happen. Consequently, outcome harvesting offers methods that are instrumental to manage knowledge and learn from complex and difficult to monitor development processes. This characteristic is important in terms of its contribution to the generation of evidence of impact of an intervention. So what is the outcome harvesting? May those who have had experience come forward and share their insights into outcome harvesting. Outcome harvesting is part and parcel of the monitoring and evaluation methodology, in that it is used to identify, describe, verify, and analyze outcomes that are emerging from an initiative. In the context of outcome harvesting, an outcome is defined as a change in the behavior, relationships, actions, activities, policies, or practices of an individual, a group of people, community, organization, or an institution. This is according to Ricardo Wilson Grau and Britt, 2013. The guru for all outcome harvesting are these colleagues that I've quoted. Ricardo Wilson Grau was most famous as the best practitioner for outcome harvesting. Until his passing away recently. Outcome harvest collects evidence of what has changed. That's where the harvesting side of things come into being. Then working backwards, it determines whether and how an intervention, be it at organization level, a program, or a project, has contributed to these changes. This contrasts with more traditional ways of carrying out monitoring and evaluation, which essentially starts with activities and then attempts to trace the changes that have occurred forward through looking at outputs, outcomes, and then impact levels. The impacts, as were earlier defined, are end states that change makers work towards. For example, reduced rates of poverty. That is the desired state. The outcomes are the specific and incremental changes in behavior that are required to reach that end state. You see the change emphasized being that in behavior. So both outcome mapping and outcome harvesting are focusing on the social change of things. Outcomes are defined as changes in the behavior writ large, such as actions, relationships, policies, and practices of one or more social actors as influenced by the intervention that has been implemented. In this regard, we see that outcome harvesting generated information tends to describe what has changed, for whom or who has been affected, When has this change occurred and where? And then fundamentally so, why does it matter to the development objective? The significance of the change, and how has the program or the intervention specifically contributed to the change? Again, as I have said before, this whole training hinges on impact evaluation, particularly in relation to generating evidence of contribution that an intervention has made to the change that we can celebrate or identify. Therefore, we see that outcome harvesting, like outcome mapping, involves different stakeholders that identify, formulate, verify, analyze, and interpret outcomes in programming context where relations of cause and effect are not fully understood. So here we are in a situation where causes and effects that are envisaged from implementing an intervention and their relations are not fully understood. This is where outcome harvesting becomes central and instrumental in terms of rallying different stakeholders. So when is outcome harvesting used? Outcome harvesting is best suited for evaluation in dynamic, uncertain, and complex situations. Therefore, it is recommended in scenarios where the focus is primarily on outcomes rather than activities. In this regard, we see decision makers as harvest users being most interested in learning about what was achieved and how it was achieved. Outcome harvesting also becomes handy when the programming context is complex. As already alluded to, of particular scenario where the relations of cause and effect are not fully understood. Also, when purpose is evaluation, in which case outcome harvesting serves to track the changes in behavior of social actors that have been influenced by implementation of the intervention. Outcome harvesting can also be handy when designed to go beyond the evaluation and support learning about those achievements that have been registered. In this respect, we see that outcome harvesting becomes particularly useful for ongoing developmental, mid-term formative, and end-of-term summative evaluations. In this regard, we see that outcome harvesting can be used all by itself to undertake fully an evaluation or in combination with other evaluation approaches. So what are the key steps in executing the outcome harvesting method? Outcome harvesting approach should be customized to specific needs of the primary intended users of the activity. So there are 6 steps that are taken more as guiding principles rather than rigid formula to follow. What we should note, though, is that the rigorous application of all the 6 principles is necessary to have a sound and credible outcome harvesting process. These steps are interlinked and iterative in a way. What it means is that they can be followed in sequence, but each one of them can be fed back to refine the preceding steps as manifested by the arrows. You see the arrow on the right are mirroring the progressive movement of steps from step 1 through the outcome harvesting product. On the other hand, we see the dotted lines on the left side or below the step boxes. The dotted lines are implying that for each step, it can influence any other preceding step. So here we see step number 2 naturally can influence step number 1. Step number 3 can feed back into both step 1 and 2 and refine them based on the experiences that have happened. So likewise for 4, 5, and 6. So you see the first step is the design stage of the harvest. The second step is reviewing the documentation and the draft outcomes. The third step is engaging with the informants that we're going to engage to generate evidence. The fourth step is to substantiate, validate the evidence, the data that we have gathered. And then we analyze that data that has been captured, and then we interpret it. As we have said before, impact evaluations are time and resource intensive. Therefore, they should only be undertaken when we can use the evidence that have been generated through them. So the key step within the outcome harvesting is the supportive use of the findings that come from the outcome harvesting process. And only then shall we have harvested the outcomes that come from implementing a process. What are the strengths of outcome harvesting as a methodology that can be used in evaluation? They recognize the strengths of outcome harvesting over others as qualitative approaches to evaluation is that it overcomes the common failure to search for unintended outcomes for interventions. So it can be very instrumental in bringing out the unintended outcomes of what has been implemented. It also generates verifiable outcomes. And uses a common sense, accessible approach that engages informants quite easily. It also has the advantage of employing various data collection methods, such as interviews and surveys, face-to-face, by telephone, by email, by way of workshops, as well as document reviews. And it tends to answer actionable questions with concrete evidence gathered from the key informants that have been part and parcel of the implementation of the intervention. Additionally, skill and time, as well as timeliness, are required to identify and formulate high-quality outcome descriptions. In which case, only those outcomes that the informants are aware of are captured. The other advantage is that participation of those who influence the outcomes is crucial. As we start with the outcomes and working backwards, this represents a new way of thinking about change for some participants. Any comments and questions on outcome harvesting as a method that aids impact evaluation within the arena of qualitative approaches to impact evaluation processes? There are a few questions by way of a quiz, again, which are meant to assess our grasp of the lesson. I thank you for your kind attention. Abaraka. Merci beaucoup.